Welcome to the Race to 270, our weekly guide to the inner workings of the Roy family. I am brought forth by the great sweetness of the virtue of the combined wisdom of the
Hey,
good
hey.
people of this republic,
Whoa.
Zachary Shevich. And joining me, he happens to be a billionaire. Sorry, it's Arturo
Wish.
Zurita.
Okay. All right. Putting things into fruition, I see. That's actually on Zach's license.
Speak it.
I don't know if y'all seen it. It's really long. It's just the name on the first, and then in the back they had to cramp everything in with the code. But hey,
They don't
he
give me
made it.
enough characters in my Twitter bio for all that. But Jared
If
Mencken,
not,
a man who knows how to introduce himself to America.
I might ask you this once because I was hearing that, and a couple of intercut explainers ago, you had broken down to me Madsen saying a line that was actually how do I put this engraved outside of an institution that we shall not speak of this early on into the
Yeah.
broadcast.
hmm
When he said that quote, is that not an English? That sounded like an English translation of something said in the 1940s.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a mixture of just like very like online constitutionalist and just dude who likes to say awesome because he wasn't like completely speaking as if he was ripping from the constitution, but yeah, it's frightening for
Whose
sure.
constitution?
Right, I think a lot of people were really unsettled by this week of Succession, shocked or just thrown off their bearings. Maybe people
Flabbergasted.
realizing their problematic faves are a bit more problematic than they realized.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Right off the bat. Thank you. There is one moment when one little individual, one little rat, started doing this little walk after saying something, and I was like, and there it is. But I will give you this. The person I hated the most was kind of the funniest one this episode.
That's the thing that we have to contend with. A really dramatic week on Succession. I feel like we could call this one a bottle episode, even though it's kind of like upstairs, downstairs. Lots going on
It's a bottle
this
of
week
it.
for sure.
A bottle episode of Diet Pepsi with Mentos. Shook it up.
Exactly.
That's what this was for sure.
Ready to explode. And it all started with one of the shortest cold opens in the show's history. One that I thought was
Clean.
pretty hysterical.
I liked it.
Uh, yeah, but Greg's feeling good. He might be the only one feeling good as we get into election eve on
It's
Succession.
here.
Where do you want to start with this? Because there's a lot of people who had a really big week this week. Maybe nobody more than Kendall and Shiv. I don't know if either of them is the person you want to start with, or do we have to talk about the wasabi incident?
I, I mean, we can tease at the wasabi incident. Just dip our fingers, just like this boy did, and then get into everybody else because we have to end it with the disgusting brothers. But that wasabi, oh my goodness, you're right. Speaking of incidents of fingers being dipped into other things as well, there was also Matson coming in with the most disgusting thing possible. When this man stuck his finger to mix his cocktail, I knew there was a third disgusting brother. That's what happens when you spend too much time with Greg.
Yeah, make sure to order your drink shaken, not stirred, if they're coming from
That's
Matson.
bro. Yo, let's just start with the breakdown. This is the first election that I think we've seen in succession, and because of that,
Yeah,
I found it fascinating to see an election. Unlike any other piece of media where we're there with the politicians, we were partly there with it because we did have one politician, Connor, rest in peace, the campaign. But I loved seeing how a news agency runs it.
yeah,
This was an
right. Like
awesome episode.
this was a really great episode, and a lot of times we talk about we're talking about the inner workings of the Roy family, right? We're seeing the
Yeah.
ups and downs, the corporate fights, the internal family squabbling, but something that Succession has done a really good job about is showing how the elites are really insulated from the rest of the world. They don't only cross
100%.
paths, they don't only not talk to people in like lower classes than them. They don't even really cross paths with people in lower classes with them unless they're driving them places or bringing them food. And
And
this
when
was
they
the
do,
rare, yeah.
you hire detail to follow your wife without her knowing.
A whole other detail that we should get into, but the thing about this week's episode that I think was really remarkable and really interesting was that this was the first time that we've seen the actions of the Roy family really having ripple effects in the larger world, in that they are the people who, in one way or another, help pump this poison into America. And it's pretty like unseemly to see it. I think in a lot of ways that this episode actually was kind of a culmination of a lot of things. I feel like Jesse Armstrong has almost
Yes.
been working not just to this episode, but even to a specific
Yes.
line. I thought there
Oh.
was, yeah, I thought there was one moment in particular when Mencken is delivering his speech. Damn, I wanted to have that picture up. Yeah, here
Mm-hmm.
it is, where Mencken is delivering his victory speech, and he says, "The election has been called for me by an authority of known integrity." And like, we know who called the election for him. We've spent 4 seasons watching these people rise to power. All the people who were stopgaps between the Roy children, between Tom and Greg, between all these people being in charge of an important decision like this have been cast aside. Logan's dead. Sid was just fired. Who knows where Jerry's off to? There's nobody to stop these completely broken, completely worthless people from potentially putting an extremely dangerous person in charge. And this is the consequence of their inactions, of their inseriousness, that they either don't know how to align themselves with somebody better or don't know how to stop this bullet when it's coming for them.
When they are going to benefit from it, they just jump down with the bandwagon. But I like how you put it. If this was a racing series, all we've been seeing is the mechanics, the pit stops, the training. This is the race. This is the episode where we saw it in action. And I think it's going to be the epitome of this newsroom type thing. Obviously, there was, HBO has the newsroom. But just like people have gravitated to the Logan episode and his passing as being like the epitome of what it's like to lose somebody, like without any what's it called, foreshadowing, like for it to just happen and as a bandit being ripped out. This is
Mm-hmm.
going to be what people think of the next time we see elections. I feel this is going to be that standout episode when they're watching all the countdowns on TV. They now have something to picture in the background besides the hosts who are all dapper right in front of the screen. uh I, yeah, this was it firing on all cylinders. I've been waiting for an
Mm-hmm.
episode like this, and I think it delivered. Every rewatch is gonna. This felt like 3 episodes in one. That's how jam packed
Yeah,
it was.
yeah. There's so much going on. I mean, it's really like it's some of the best stuff, and it also feels like a lot of things coming to, like, a lot of characters sort of having their moment of truth, right? Like Shiv has tried to be this more liberal minded operator in a world of uh heavily conservative people and extremely wealthy people who don't share a lot of her more like socially liberal viewpoints. And despite all her efforts to try and stop something like this from happening, she's completely powerless. Kendall, it all show long has been wavering between, is he a good person or can he be a good businessman? And this episode in particular, he spent the entire time stammering, being unsure of himself, not
Sitting.
really knowing what to say until the moment when he decides to go against Shiv and support Mencken. That's the one clear-eyed moment he has in this entire episode.
Man, he was like the Golden State Warriors bench. He was just sitting on the side while everything happened in front
Yeah.
of him. I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
Um, and just ultimately landing on, he's a guy we can do business with, just showing the emptiness in his soul for what it was. Like, I don't know. He has a moment when he's trying to confront Roman, and he's trying to stop it, but he can't. Like, he just doesn't have his heart in it. He can't really argue it, as definitely not as like fervently as Roman does. Even when
Mm-hmm.
like he says, "Oh, somebody pushed my daughter," he's like, "Oh, she's okay though." Like,
I
he, he
no,
he doesn't
yeah,
have a spine. He doesn't have a spine.
yeah. But yeah, that was like the one little moment where I remembered. Okay, Roman is still somewhere in there. To hear that about your niece and to still inquire about her, but Roman was a freaking snake. This man,
Mm-hmm.
Logan, isn't dead. He has been reincarnated in this little weasel right here. I could not believe the way he just flipped on a dime. Everything that we were saying about him being emotionally unstable was 100% there, but no one expected him to be the one to pull the dagger the way that he did.
Hmm.
Incredible. Disgusting. But just a
Yeah.
powerhouse performance. This was the episode where you take that to the bank of you saying that you're rooting for him to be the one taking home the gold in a couple of months from now. He commanded it. We had never seen this version of this man. And it
Yeah.
scared me
I
a
mean,
little bit.
it did. I mean, like he's always been a bit of a troll, and he has these little moments where he'll throw in some really unsavory thoughts, some really politically incorrect
Mm-hmm.
ideas. But this was a full hour of it. This was like
Mm-hmm.
pure, like uncut, unhinged, just full, like almost foaming at the mouth, Roman, and
Yeah.
how effective he is at kind of throwing his body in front of any counter argument. There's like there's that moment when Shiv says, I have concerns for the state of the republic and pluralism, and Roman just says she's boring. Like he's not even going to engage with it on an intellectual level. He's just going to brute force his way through these arguments. And in this scenario, it really works for him, although it's like the most disgusting that he's been perhaps in this entire show.
If I may, I think
Yeah.
that's the way you win. I think
Right.
he knows what the game is. It's not this pitter patter. Oh, I got to this and this and this and this. He knows that's not what's going to win. That's not the way the world is run, especially from what he learned from his father. Well, he just learned that from Matson. Matson does the exact same thing. His response last week to the numbers was that they were gay. Like he knows that when it comes down to who's going to get something done, it's acting in this way. It's putting
Yeah.
someone up to stir up the pot, to get the emotions running, and to be able to call an election, to be able to, as he put it, have the people in charge so that he's able to continue ATN, selling
Mhm.
out fully.
And and that kind of feels like Jesse Armstrong's view of the world as well, because on one side of the argument, Roman is able to get this assurance from Mencken that they will block the Gojo deal. Mencken
Yep.
is willing to play just as dirty as Roman is, and despite the fact that you're not supposed to have these kind of alliances between people in power and the media, they don't have that sort of moral hang up about it. Whereas
Yeah.
on the other side of the fence, the people who lose this whole election, like Shiv is afraid to even make that ask. And when Kendall tries to ask the Democratic side of the aisle for a favor, he gets stonewalled. So it's the people
Didn't
who,
even phone it in.
yeah, the people who are the most um, willing to compromise whatever seeming integrity people are supposed to
Will
have,
win.
that end up winning in this situation.
Yep. That's exactly how it is. Because even with Shiv, we're not going to keep it a buck. The whole episode, I'm like, she's also not that virtuous. Episode ends, and in the outro, she says, "Let's be honest. It's not like she really cares that much. She has an inkling of it, but she's still relying on living off the money that ATN has. So,
Yeah.
like, she's still gonna benefit from it. I like what Harshal said in the chat. Shout out everyone watching the live stream. One of the things I really appreciated was that they don't really do the Aaron Sorkin thing. That's why I think if you go back to a pic of Roman, he doesn't have this super composureness to it. It's his what has now been memed. That makes
Yeah.
him so realistic. That makes him just an average schmuck. That makes it feel real. It's this idea
Hmm.
of not having this very big actor come in to command the scene, but what a real person behind the scenes actually looks like. It really helps you visualize who's making the moves, and the best episode of Succession that he's been in, easily.
I also really love when they make references to their childhood, right? And there's that very funny moment
Mm,
when he says, "If you wanted roast chicken and I wanted steak, we'd always have chicken." And just bringing it back to the childhood arguments between him and Kendall, thought was really an interesting kind of way to reveal the nature of their fights, right? Like the Shiv did the same thing last episode. They're still having the same types of squabbles that they had when they were children. They are still they're grown adults that behave like children with each other. And Roman just maybe he's the best at being a child.
mm-hmm. I think yeah. I think he had the most survival mode, if anything, right?
Yeah.
And I think that explains a lot into the dynamics with their dad and why he ended up being one of the closest ones. It could be because of where he is in terms of, being the youngest, but
Hmm.
he knew how to survive the most. And that's finally coming into play, which again, it makes the writing so beautiful.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. To still have those squabbles now, it just so happens to be that they can affect an election. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah. Big episode for Roman. Big episode for Shiv too, as we were mentioning, because aside from trying to block potential fascist from the highest office in America, she also has a moment with, or a few moments, I guess, with Tom. She takes him aside and apologizes to him. And then he refuses to apologize to her, tells her that she killed her father, and then she finally drops the pregnancy bombshell on him, but like he's so like Roy pilled at this moment, and thinking of everything as a power play or as some kind of move, or maybe he's just really done being put through the emotional ringer with Shiv. That his response is to say, "Is that even true, or is that like a position or a tactic?" Which is interesting to me for two reasons. One, devastating thing to tell somebody who's just told you that they're pregnant and you're the father. But two, there is a great little moment, and this is a reason to compliment the actor Matthew Macfadyen, who's excellent as always. But there's just like the split second after she tells him where you can see in his face that he's kind of happy, like he's
You got
kind
a
of
pic of him,
always
bro?
really wanted. I
Because
need. I wish I had that moment. Let me see if I
that
can
bit,
grab it quick.
I agree with you. The standout of like just having that smile and almost feeling joy. The election, all that pressure of him having to do the call went away as he looked at her. But it's been such a broken relationship. He put his guard up in the happiest
Oh.
moment. Emmy award winning actor right there. That was great.
Was that your favorite Tom episode? Favorite Tom moment of the episode as well, or was there
My
something else?
heart
Because he
skipped
had a
when I saw
lot to
his
do.
smile and then sank when he decided to belittle her that she walked away. Yeah, I thought it was horrible. I did love the funny moment afterwards. You need us to kill him? We can take time out? Get him out of here. Might just have to.
Yeah,
But that
yeah.
exchange is what people have been waiting for. And I know everyone, had their great predictions out there. DraftKings.com on Mother's Day would have a mother mention, of course. But I'm very curious to see where it's going to take it because it's like they don't really resolve anything at the end. And he is the one who pulls the dagger, thus upsetting her, not only even more so in their relationship, but upsetting her and not her getting her way. It is interesting that she apologized though after what was the biggest fight I would say, now having a week off of it that they've had in the series
Yeah.
thus far, and still being willing to come back and apologize. Obviously, it wasn't going to be an easy one, but like they really do just like they're those little dolls that you punch them and they come right back up. That's all this relationship is.
Yeah, well, we were talking about it last week that it felt like they had aired out so much of their dirty
It's
laundry
almost
on
a
each
good
other
thing.
that it was hard. Well, it was hard to see them coming back, but at the same way, like they, if anybody, they're the couple who might be able to do it. Um, at the same time, though, they're just so like shell shocked. She mentions that she's still dealing with the death of her father. Tom is just devastated in his own way for many reasons of just going through all of this. It's tough, man, because like they don't have a lot of allies but each other. But how
Exactly.
do you go back to somebody who's done all those things to you?
I don't know. There's. And I'm not gonna say it applies to them, but there are some relationships where being lovey-dovey, having that comfort, isn't gonna be the thing that brings you closer. It's going
Yeah.
through that bunch and getting through all the BS. And sometimes it's hurtful, but that's the one thing that's gonna let you grow.
Yeah. So, do you still have hope for those crazy kids, or you think
No.
Tom is getting the axe?
It's worse. I don't think they're splitting. I think the worst thing is that they're gonna be together and raise this child just like they did with all of the other Roys.
Oh,
Look at him,
yeah.
boy. Looks like he dipped his hands in wasabi.
I mean, it's all he wanted was to have a baby with Shiv,
That
and
is
now
all
he
he
can't even
wanted,
enjoy
man.
that. It's tragic in its own way.
But we
Um,
confirmed a lot of people were wondering if it was a surrogate, even though we did have the hospital scene. That it is her. So I'm still
right.
kind of curious how after the humping Olympics how that was possible. But hey, it's there. 2 episodes?
Absolutely.
These episodes better be 3 hours long, man. There's too many storylines.
Yeah. I want to circle back to Ken too, because I
Hmm.
thought we had a couple really interesting things. You mentioned it in brief that he now has an SUV following Rava and his kids. Like that's his version of being
A
a dad.
father.
Is he adding surveillance to them that freaks them out? But like it's again, it's that inability to actually show up for your kids other than in ways that you like financially support them. The episode ends with that
Where he
scene
was, yeah, yeah,
of
yeah.
him in the back of the car calling Rava and saying, "Can I come see them?" And she says that they're asleep already. But I also thought it was very interesting how they chose to end the episode. The last line of this episode of Succession was him saying, "Some people just can't cut a deal for Cret." Who is Fakret? Well, it's this driver, and it's now apparently his best friend because as Kendall continues to
Mm,
turn into Logan, he needs his own Colin.
good point. Great catch
Yeah.
there. I didn't know who that was. I thought that was another reference to another political thing, but yeah,
Who is
I
Fakret? Yeah.
he really is. He's just becoming his father all over again, and I think that this is
Mhm.
like the dawning of. I look. I still think they're gonna ruin it all, because I have a
Yeah.
question for you. How can you call an election if they're still going to count the votes and then say, boy, you shouldn't be trusted? You know, there's a certain point where this can't be ESPN. You can't be calling who you think is going to win a game and then you don't get it right. Like, at a certain time, you should be fired. This is the biggest reason for it. I didn't really understand the idea of calling it, other than are they looking for a cushion of 3 months to be able to make deals? Because it seems to me
Well,
like this is a reason to take ATN down.
absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about the machinations of calling
Huh?
the election here because they are sort of trying to draw some allusions both to 2016 and to 2000, a couple of the more closely contested elections in American history. 2016, I think the parallels are more so in the shock that all these people feel that like they wake up the day like fairly confident that it's going to the liberal candidate and then something changes and all of a sudden the person who everybody thought was too dangerous to become president is president. So there's some of that parallel too, but it did also remind me a lot of the hanging Chad incident in
Mm-hmm.
Florida in 2000, where we went to those months of re-election or recounts of the votes to see whether or not George Bush or Al Gore had more votes. The thing is that in that case, the confidence with which the Bush campaign sort of asserted that they had won before all the information was all, like counted and assured is part of what built the narrative that Bush won the election and we need to move on. We don't need to take spend months and years or whatever in the courts for this. And the courts then ultimately did decide that as well. But I
Yeah, that's
think
what I'm saying.
what they're hoping is similar to how Trump at during the 2020 election, as they were counting votes for Philadelphia, was like, no, stop the count, we're good. They're trying to
Yeah.
just sort of um, by legitimizing the idea that Mencken won an election where not all the votes have yet been counted. There at least is like the momentum generating behind his campaign that could maybe influence things in a certain direction, that maybe it ends up people end up not taking it to the full extent of going through the courts and all of that because it's sort of like
I mean,
become recognized. I mean, it will still go through it, but I think what they're talking about is a sort of soft power that presidents have, where even if they don't necessarily have the power to enact certain rule changes or laws, their influences the people below them, right? Like it's whoever is in charge of the federal government, the the people below them tend to follow their lead in certain ways. So I think
okay.
there's an argument to like it really comes down to that argument that that moment between Kendall and Shiv, right before Shiv makes the fake phone call, where Shiv tells him that we have the power to stop him. He needs us. No one else is going to. No other no other news organization as legit as ATN is going to call this election in favor of Mencken. But if they call it in favor of Mencken, it's the kind of juice that will help push the campaign. So, you know, I think that it's going to continue to be an issue. I think seeing
I think it's their
Mencken in,
demise.
yeah, right, like that's the thing is it could in early in the episode, Darwin says that leaking information can get them ousted of the election pool, and like,
Yeah.
yeah, like they could lose their legitimacy. So like by the end of this, ATN might not even want to be an asset that Matson even wants.
I love the line he
We'll
said.
see.
Make sure they don't break my toy. I thought that
Yeah,
was the rawest
exactly.
line he had. But that's what I'm
Absolutely.
saying. In the examples that you brought up, in 2020, did we have an outlet, a news agency who was willing to put themselves in that much hot water? Like,
Well,
yeah,
so
they played the
there.
game of appeasing the, oh, stop the count, there's a revote.
Mhm.
But like that man took it to court. Donald took that to court everywhere, and he kept
Yeah,
losing. But he wasn't the news outlet. It's almost like they're combining both, right? Because they're in cahoots, they're working together.
exactly. Yeah.
I feel
and,
like
and
them doing that is going to be the end to ATN.
yeah,
Also,
and
also,
and
also,
maybe it will
also,
be. Yeah.
the
Well,
Wisconsin
no,
thing,
just to
insurrection,
well,
a little bit right there with the bombing.
yeah, I mean, so there's a
They
couple
brought
things
it
that
in.
you can talk. You could say that the insurrection still might come. I saw Sam
Oh,
Adams
I
tweeted
can't be
something.
that big.
I saw Sam Adams tweet something that got my brain rattling, where he said he's been thinking for months that they're going to do a January 6th / funeral episode. So we'll see what happens next week on
Interesting.
Succession. The incident in Milwaukee did remind me of how in 2020 there was like a group
Tennessee.
of or in Arizona, actually, the people who surrounded the counting offices, and they actually had
Mm-hmm.
to evacuate, I think, the counting office at one point in Arizona. So like there has been these moments of intimidation, maybe nothing as quite severe as a fire that burned 100,000
Yeah.
votes in Milwaukee.
Roman talked about Roman. This is when I knew he had lost it. When Roman had mentioned, which is also another story that
The
we were
fun
carrying from
vans.
2020, the vans. Oh, it's kidnapping. Oh, wow, we're kidnapping. I was like, this man has lost it. It's over. It's over for y'all. I would
Yeah,
not.
you
If you
can't
have
just call
shirts of
everything
Roman,
you don't like a false flag.
you guys got to throw that merch away.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. That's when he started going down. So, yeah, I think it was interesting to, like you said, build up the world so it feels very reflective of other things and past campaigns and such. I don't know. It feels like they shot themselves in the foot. And with 2 episodes left, I don't see it ending on them with the campaign and in good standing.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly like there's no proper real world corollary for it, but I do think we live in a world where if one news channel says it, a whole section of the country is going to believe that, and that's not just Fox News.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
MSNBC too.
But
So like,
affecting the law?
well, but it's like there's that line that Roman has where he says, "You're our president," right? It's the you
Not
are
my. Yeah,
you
yeah,
legitimize
yeah,
him in a
yeah.
way. Yeah.
Not my president. Gotcha.
Exactly. So we'll see what the consequences of that is, and whether or not it will end up helping or hurting them. Was it a sad end to the Connor Roy campaign? Unfortunately, he
Yo, they
thought he had a
killed it.
chance in Kentucky, and
That
that
scene
shot,
in Kentucky was so funny.
dude, the whiplash of going from we think if it's going to happen anywhere, it's going to happen into Kentucky, and then a minute later
Alas,
they don't even
Kentucky.
mention his name.
No, they really
Alas,
filmed that.
vanity.
They filmed that like he just got kicked out of the finals, bro. He looked
Yeah.
like, when they zoom in at the end of the World Series to the losers on the bench?
Yeah.
He really thought he had a chance. Succession is really good because they're always talking about that extra character that's in the room, the camera.
Yeah.
They just know how to make something so funny without doing anything. And yeah, that was
Yeah.
just hysterical. The fact that he still believed that he was something. And then his speech, someone almost beat Mencken.
You're right. I mean, I thought Alan Ruck was just on fire this episode. He was so hysterical in those moments when he's on the phone, but then also in that speech that you mentioned. I love the idea. How about I concede in his direction? Just such a funny idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, also extremely hysterical that his campaign slogan is just "enough already." Do you see that?
For the con heads, they liked it. They probably voted that in.
Yeah.
I also like that when he gave his speech, that's the one time you get a shot of the crew. They make one little appearance for the episode, one little shot, and it's just for them to laugh at Connor. They gathered everyone for one shoot there.
Yo, when Frank says Connor was running for president, like
That's funny.
one of the best burns that we've had on this show, full of great
Very good.
burns.
It's very good.
Very, very funny stuff. I also really liked that, like, apparently there's been all this vice presidential drama with Connor's campaign where somebody where he says he was betrayed by two jackrabbits. Like, I don't know what the hell is
Yeah.
going on there, but
That
now I
came out
want
of
those
nowhere.
episodes.
I would like to see that. That's the spinoff that they're gonna give you.
Yeah, exactly. Who else do we know? Do we want to talk about Darwin at all? Because Darwin had a rough go of it this episode. Not only does he get pressured into calling an election that he doesn't think was actually called, but Greg gets wasabi and LaCroix in his eye. That wasabi scene is one of the most funny things I think that's happened on this show. We were talking about how well written this episode is. I feel like every single line is quotable in some way, but I don't have, like, part of it is also just the overlapping nature of scenes like this, all talking on top of each other, and Tom yelling, "It's lemony, Greg!" It's so funny to me.
He's like, it's water. Look, it's not. It's just a hint of lemon. I know everyone loves wasabi. Wasabi's gonna win. It's gonna take it. But it's just a hint of lemon. It was so funny.
The slow sip he takes too.
Hey, look. I know better than to throw LaCroix at somebody, but like, damn, I almost kind of agree with Greg. It is damn near water.
Yeah, right.
But that's what you get for getting the gas station sushi.
Yeah, right.
Let's not forget they were both bumped out.
Bodega sushi.
Yeah, they were bumped out. Like, both of them ran this whole election high as can be. And just the fact that you had Greg, probably one of my favorite parts for Greg is just doing this the entire episode. Yeah, this way. There are moments in the episode where they keep that gag running when they're just going to another scene and Greg is still doing this. That killed me. Those were some of the funniest moments for Greg. That he really thought he was guiding somebody.
Him trying to wrangle the Roy siblings off of the newsroom floor. So fun.
But,
so funny.
Great back and forth between him and Shiv. The setup where she does have him. She corners him and is able to, like, kind of push him, and he thinks he's able to get something out of there, because one of my favorite lines of the episode comes in early when he's talking about maybe having an up on Shiv's relationship with Mattson. And Tom says, "That's information, Greg. It's like a fine wine. You keep it, you store it, you hoard it, and then you smash it in someone's face." I think that's going to be used against. It's going to be used against ATN very soon, I believe. But the way that he thinks that he has that on Shiv, and Shiv kind of wins that first fight, but there was multiple rounds here, and this man came out on top. It makes me angry, but I gotta give it where credit is due. You know that meme from The Last Dance where the guy beats Jordan and he goes like that, where he calls her out and does one of those with the little eyebrows. Very clean win for him. Very clean.
Yeah, we kind of joked around the idea of, like, is Greg the Bran of Succession? Is Greg going to be oddly the last one left standing when all the pieces fall around him?
Not going to be gone.
A lot of support for that theory this week. Greg getting in with Mattson and his monstrous crew. He danced with an old man and they didn't want to dance, but they made us dance. He drank things that aren't normally drinks. What do you think they... What do you think?
Well, I don't even want to.
Like fluid?
I have absolutely no idea where that could go. But considering that he stayed up pretty late, I think it scarred him. One of the things that I did enjoy was when it comes to making the decision, somehow it's Greg walking down to press the button.
I thought this was one of the best scenes of this episode, and maybe even the best Greg scene, period.
What's the opening shot of Greg? Vomiting a mascot at a theme park that's run down?
Yeah.
And delivery. Damn near the coast.
What an incredible 6-year rise he's had from Doderick to the guy who delivers the news of the next president to the United States.
I hate him, but I'm almost proud for the boy.
Right?
Oh, also, how does Shiv know about the Disgusting Brothers? She's been checking the messages, huh?
I think that's when Disgusting Brothers was still when she and Tom were sharing some information.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, no, I want to go back to the hallway scene just for a sec because I really, really loved that moment. Greg, who I think like probably has some like liberal views that he doesn't feel too strongly about, and you can see him sort of like processing. Oh man, I'm about to do a pretty bad thing, and I love that they use Jess for this moment too, who is a character
Yes.
we haven't heard like a huge amount from uh, on the show, but like
Thought you gonna stab him.
she always does a really good job of feeling like the only normal person in the room, like her little just like half second
Yes.
expressions when Kendall says something ridiculous. And here like she's very powerless, but you can kind of tell there's a part of her who's like trying to get him to maybe have a backbone or not do the thing, or maybe you'll stop it for a couple minutes. But I don't know, I love that little exchange between them, and that like
Yeah.
even when once he's out of sight, there's like a quick moment where you see her look horrified and then go to her phone, like maybe to call her mom or something. Like,
Yeah.
I thought that was a really powerful scene.
There was a lot of those. Because you're. I felt that too. I was like, is she gonna try to do something? Is she gonna try to stop it? She has one chance here to do a headbutt of some sort, convince him to deliver it wrongly, but she does it, and I almost felt like just like Greg. There's so the idea of being here at this moment, right? There's 4 seasons of Succession. This is
Mm-hmm.
like the first election we've seen this group actually be a part of, and be a part of. You
Yeah.
also have Willa earlier. We discussed last week. She spent a little bit in theater, became very liberal, and yet there's still that moment before Connor goes to speak where she goes, "Well, it's
He
not
is very
really
right
as
wing.
it is very right wing," and then immediately remembers where she's at.
A
Immediately
Vienna for
remembers, just like the
lunch,
boys.
Venice for
You
dinner,
know, and I think those
Dubrovnik for
flashes come up.
breakfast.
It comes across these characters and they remember what they're really in it for. And I don't think they care. And I think that goes all the way to the starlet that everyone thinks is the big, with Shiv's character, that she is the one who really does care. I don't think she cares either. She cares to also be on top. It just so happens that she seems to align with the more liberal view. But hey, if anybody wanted to stop it, the one thing they definitely could do is not work there. And it's been 4 seasons. They haven't left.
Yeah, I mean, I think Shiv is pretty horrified by all this, but she's not horrified enough to distance herself from her family, right? Like she's not
Mm-hmm.
horrified enough to
She wouldn't have
stop
anybody.
speaking to Roman. Yeah,
Yeah.
she wouldn't have anything. Exactly. She's not going to go live in a trailer park with Tom.
How do you lose to Roman that many times in one episode, though?
I mean, look, she had a little bit of a rebound by getting close to Matson, but it has been a tough season for Shiv.
Yeah.
Anybody else that we should cover before we get into some of the best quotes? You know, we mentioned Matson briefly. I thought it was pretty funny that he calls Gregory Peggery when telling Shiv about their late night escapades.
Yeah, now that they're friends. What did he say? I needed oh, Greg the Normalist. That was a good one.
Yeah. Uh, and I also just loved Frank, Carl, and Hugo's little war room watching the election together.
That was good.
I could have done with way more of that as well.
Just funny to
Um,
see it in one little seed, though. That's what got me.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, Mencken on top, the unlikely ascendant to the throne. You know, I didn't realize because the show doesn't always make its timeline perfectly clear. They mentioned that his campaign only started 6 months ago. Somebody commented and cleared up that he's running because the previous president, the Raisin, decided to not run for re-election. So thinking about this just in real world terms, like absolutely insane to think about the possibility of a guy launching his presidential election in April and being the president by October.
Yeah.
But that's what's going on in Royville.
Interesting.
Yeah. You want to talk about some of the best quotes?
Shoot.
All right. So you mentioned one, the Tom one, information, Greg. It's like a bottle of fine wine. You store it, you hoard it, you save it for a special occasion, and then you smash somebody's fucking face in with it. I love that. I love the little like twist on the end of it there.
His
Very well
my
written.
digestive system is a part of the Constitution was kind of raw.
Yeah.
I don't need another Greg. I need this Greg.
Yeah, when he bumps Greg back down to coffee duty. I also thought Tom when he was talking about cocaine and trying to get Greg to do some when he says it's medically good for your brain.
Your
What are you
brain.
saying? All Aztecs are stupid? Don't be a
You
racist little bitch
racist.
about it. Roman saying my team's playing your team. It's only spicy because if my team wins, they're going to shoot your team. Connor trying to angle himself for ambassadorship again. Organize a little coup down in Peru. Put me in a van to Tajikistan. Couldn't I be our fun guy down in Uruguay? um, and then Kendall, I think, with the best summation of what's going on this episode. So because we had so much chicken when we were kids, I have to elect a fascist.
The one that I have on the board was once it's news, we'll cover it, and that came from the news.
There's
Roman had a
so
little one
many
on
small little lines.
his
Yeah.
tantrum one to go with what you were saying about the chicken thing.
Yeah.
The throwing a tantrum will get you what you want, and it was interesting because just completely unrelated. The Beau is Afraid like rollout. One of the big things that he had with that movie was these Adult Swim things about how to throw a tantrum to get your way, and I completely saw that here. These are full grown nepo billionaire babies who, when they don't get their way, like you said, are going to default to what they did as kids.
Yeah.
They threw a tantrum to win an election. Crazy.
Yeah, and it worked for Roman.
For
Yeah.
now.
Well, let's talk about what's going to come
Serve
next
chicken in
because
jail.
there's only 2 more episodes of Succession. It's hard to believe because it's so good and it feels like if they want to, they could just keep going down these holes. Like the relationships are so like alive and live wire. I just kind of want a lot more of it. But the thing that struck me in thinking about us getting close to the end here is we've been coming on this podcast every week and talking about, all right, what's coming next? What are we anticipating? What's going to happen? We're kind of running out of things that we knew were going to happen. We knew Shiv was going to have to drop that pregnancy bombshell at some point. We knew that the election was going to happen. Obviously, the funeral is still going to happen, but that looks like it's happening on the next episode.
Actually, great, yeah.
So I kind of have like no idea what's going to happen in the finale, and I love that feeling of just being completely unsure of what's going on. But I trust so much in Jesse Armstrong and their team to guide us at this point. Any thoughts about what we have left? Any things that you feel like still need to be resolved, still need to come up?
Probably a lot in retrospect. My big thing is that we have another HBO finale too, if you include Barry, and the idea of will it be able to stick the landing? We're at Scary Times again. This is the biggest show they've had, in my opinion, since the last big show they had that didn't land it as great. Will it be able to? Because in landing that, the show has broken this fourth wall of its own Succession. Will it be able to retain that? If they're ending it, what we consider pretty early in 4 seasons, will it have an ending that will live up for it to remain a classic?
I feel
I'm more concerned about
more,
that.
Yeah, I feel a lot more confident in this than Game of Thrones because Game of Thrones, it became clear like a few episodes before we got to that finale that something bad was up. And like, you can also put the argument out there that a lot of people don't like the Sopranos finale. I feel like in retrospect, it's an extremely bold and brave choice, but it's also something that is kind of in line with the way that David Chase wrote that show.
For sure.
I feel like Jesse seems so clear-headed in the statements that he's making about these characters, about news media, about politicians. I would be surprised if he doesn't have something strong lined up for wrapping this up. Now, people will disagree. There's lots of people who want one thing and they won't get it. But for me, I'm just excited to get whatever we get at this point.
There's no book that they've fallen behind unless you consider the upcoming election as being a little too early.
Exactly.
But I agree with you. I do want it to fall, and that's what I'm saying, in line with the Breaking Bads of the world. When I'm looking at that score for the Logan episode and I go back to Ozymandias, like, those are incredible culture shifting
Peak
episodes.
TV.
That peak TV that everyone agreed on. I wanted to have that. Not a Sopranos where someone thinks about it later or that people are mixed. I wanted to have that Breaking Bad type of farewell. So Fingers crossed, right? Hey, when you're ending
Yeah.
it early, that's a lot of confidence. That's a lot of
Exactly, right?
confidence.
You call your shot like that.
That's pretty cool.
Um, they in the preview for next week, we did get a brief appearance from James Cromwell's Ewan character. I'm glad to see
Nice.
him back because he was one of my favorite uh brief characters on Succession.
It's really good.
Um, but aside from that, is there there's nothing else you can think of? Like, do you want to see the waiter that Logan partially killed? I guess. Do you want to see that come back up in a bigger way, or was the
Kendall.
ending of season 3? Yeah, or was the end of season 3 where he tells his siblings kind of enough, and you feel like the end of that storyline?
Hey, no, I'm good with that coming back if that's the case. But I've told you who I want to come back. That dude who was screwing with them in the first episode, who said, "I'm going to take everything from you," and then never does.
Walter,
Yes.
the dude from Walter.
100%, because I also see it being this full circle thing where in this episode they keep throwing this China line. I don't even know the man's ethnicity, but it don't matter to these guys who just do all these quips. They keep saying China's coming, China's here. I can only imagine Roman getting screwed over by him and then going like, "Yep, you lost. They took it all away from you." I think that would be the craziest bookend, and the fact that they
Yeah.
kind of had a lot of stuff laid out would be good. Do we know anything from Walter? Like, have they
I don't
given him
know,
a
man.
background?
Well, he shutters the company in season 2 when he's like his dad's pet. So we haven't really heard from him since season 2. I don't know if he started a new media venture or something like that. Maybe he's at like the new Gawker or something. But
If he comes back, that'd be funny.
yeah,
That he'd be the
it'd
one
be funny.
person who takes them out that I'd really appreciate. What about you?
Yeah. I don't really want to see the waiter storyline come back up. I kind of feel like it served most of its dramatic purpose, and the way that I feel like things are going, I don't think like that's the thing that would take Kendall down. I feel like there's got to be something that he does now, not something in his past. But if he's going to have a fall from grace, it should be because of something that he is doing in the present moment. So I feel
And
like
you
it
don't
might be a
see
little.
him taking himself out, like for his
You
family
mean
or for something else.
I think if he was gonna make like step up and be a family man, he would have done it or could have done it this week. But
So for you, you're betting on demise. I'm betting
I
on
mean,
demise. I don't see them continuing.
I don't know
But
about
then it'll say,
demise.
go. Sorry.
I don't know about demise of the whole company, but demise of like their integrity or demise of the idea that he could be a good person or better in the role than his father. I think that's gone. And like,
Mm.
I think the key thing between him and Shiv when they had that talk was her trying to assure him, you're a good person. You're essentially a good person. You're an
Yeah.
okay dad. Like she's just trying to get him to like hold on to his humanity, but his humanity is no obstacle for his desire to be powerful, his desire to run his father's business. And I think
Tail.
it's going to be about him compromising any sense of morals that he has in order to be the most ruthless businessman he can be.
Tails old as time.
Lot to look forward to. I'm really excited. I really love this episode. I think this next to Connor's wedding, this might have been my favorite episode this season of Succession. I don't know
Nice.
about you.
Yeah, no, to me this is like I said, the aftermath of the
Yeah,
succeeding. This is seeing them at full power. What is higher than an election?
right. Then deciding the next leader of the free world.
This is going to be one
Do
where
you?
the more times that we rewatch it, I'm going to notice new things
Yeah.
every single time.
One more question, just as we get back to that. The argument that the other argument Shiv had that I thought was compelling and maybe a little bit supported by what Mencken said in his speech is like, how do we know that Mencken will actually do what he says, that he will actually block the Gojo deal? Do you feel like that's also a possibility out there, that maybe
Yeah, I was
he's
a little
not going to be the
confused.
ally they hoped?
Yeah, by blocking the Gojo deal, what are they getting out of that? Does that also include flipping it on its head and them wanting to buy or pillage their village? Like I was
Right.
confused there.
Yeah.
I thought because I had misheard it, thinking that they're like, oh no, Jimenez can't win because he'll block the deal, something that they may want. But I
Yeah.
guess it's a
I think
reverse
they
of
just
that.
they want to just right now they're focused on just stopping the sale, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be in their back pocket, but again, you never know.
You
You
never know.
never know.
All right, any last bits about the episode, or should we just meet back here next week for the penultimate episode of Succession?
I don't know what you're going to bring. I'm going to bring a little Scottish whiskey to pour out for the man Logan.
Yeah.
We've missed him. I love still seeing his name in the opening credits. But yeah, tomorrow's a big farewell for him. You know, they truly captured that. Having him pass, and then all the time that it takes. Because when she was saying, she's like, "My dad just died,
Like,
just
yeah.
died." I'm like, it's kind of been 3 weeks. Well, actually, no, it's been like a couple days for you.
Yeah,
We're
it's
getting a
even
whole
like
full
4 days.
circle moment with that. So yeah.
Yeah. All right, so that's about it for this edition of our Succession recaps on Intercut Explains. You can catch more from me, Zach Shevich, by following me on Twitter, Instagram, or Letterboxd at zshevich. That's ZSHEV as in Vienna for lunch, Venice for dinner, ICH. And check out my YouTube or TikTok channels at Multiplex Show. Art, where can people find more from you?
You can find me over at LME Movies on all the social medias, or here reading the chat where someone said, "Did you notice the Scarface homage?" I'm telling you, dude, I'm gonna keep rewatching this episode and find a bunch of other
Yeah.
things. But thanks to the Intercuties who watch every week here on the Intercut Podcast.
You can listen to every episode of the Intercut podcast on iTunes, Anchor, Spotify, Podcast Addict, whatever your favorite podcatcher is. I like Overcast. And then make sure you're subscribed not just to the audio version, but to the video feed as well. YouTube.com/IntercutPod, where you can watch our bright smiling faces as we break down the latest in entertainment. Find new episodes of our weekend must-watch streaming on the YouTube channel every Monday. And please leave us a comment, like the video, and consider heading over to iTunes to give us that much requested 5-star review. Shout out to those of you who do. Shout out to our listeners in Germany who put us on the film review charts out there. You can like our Facebook. You can follow our Instagram. You can follow our Twitter. You can also support our Patreon for as little as $1 a month and find all of those pages at Intercut Pod to get updates throughout the week from Art, from me, from all the guests that we feature here on Intercut, as well as in the Discord, which you can find a link to in the description below. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, be warned, the Codheads are coming.